Well, our first stop today is at the home of Steve Dobbs. He was Oklahoma gardening host from 1990 to 1995. And Steve, thank you so much for inviting us out.
Well, you're welcome, Brenda. Welcome to Morningstar Farms.
Well, this is really fun. Steve, I'm sure that our viewers would like to know what you're doing right now.
Well, gosh, 3 years ago, I guess, we moved back to our family farm, and we're growing some plants I've talked about, I guess, for years, you might say, wholesale, have a little bit of retail business, and we raised tiger striped cattle. And of course, our farm is Morningstar Farms. We're halfway between Vian and Sallisaw in the eastern part of the state.
Oh, well, it is absolutely beautiful here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was my family farm. As you can tell, my dad and mother did an awful lot of work. We're very blessed to be here.
Well, you have, in addition to this beautiful farm, you also have a nice landscape, and you've been working really hard on this. And maybe you could tell us some of the stuff that you're growing in your landscape.
Well, I guess my interest and maybe passion now has been foliage color. For some reason, people think that color has to come from a flower, and I'm trying to prove them wrong maybe a little bit with some of the colorful foliage, because once you put it in the ground, it stays colorful right up till the freeze. But in this particular bed, we have the Sun Coleus. We have Plum Parfait and Burgundy Sun, which are the Super Sun series, which truly will take the heat and wind. And we have ground cover foliage color, which is the ornamental sweet potato. Blackie is a cultivar. And then some of the purple fountain grass.
That's a wonderful grass. Now, you also have dwarf purple fountain grass in this.
Right. The purple fountain grass has been around for several years, and of course for us it's just an annual. I even thought it would overwinter this last year, and it didn't. But I guess last year the dwarf one called rubrum was released, and we grew it last year, and it still gets probably 2.5 to 3 feet tall, but it's definitely more dwarf than 5 or 6 feet tall, which is the standard. And it's still that brilliant burgundy color, maybe not quite as intense. It seemed like last year it had a little more green, but it's definitely more dwarf and still very attractive in the landscape.
Okay. Well, that's a good one to be on the lookout for then.
That's right. It's a nice one. It sure is.
Well, Steve, we're going to move on and look at some more of your landscape here. Now, Steve, you've got a nice shade garden up here, and what are some of the plants that you've got planted here?
Well, this is actually on the west side of the house, but the tree, thanks to the oak tree, it does provide quite a bit of shade. And kind of experimenting with some new plants again. The holly that I've got kind of in a unusual line is called soft touch holly, and it like somewhat acidic soil, and it truly is soft to the touch, which is very nice, and it responds to shearing. So it's one that's becoming one of my favorite for evergreen color, as well as the Emerald Spreader U. It was just released last year. It supposedly stays about 18 inches tall and will spread almost 4 to 5 feet wide, which is very unusual, but I found it hard to get this year because it's so new, but it's really a pretty color.
That is a really pretty color. That'll be nice to fill in this area.
It will, and we'll have to put in quite as much seasonal color maybe eventually.
So, now you've also got the variegated plant over here.
Right. That one is one that grows as a ground cover, and it's somewhat invasive. It's called Pink Flamingo, is a cultivar of water celery, and the texture's really nice with it for a shade garden. But you know, I think you've told me you're using it as a water garden plant.
Right.
And that's actually where most people will find that one, as a water garden plant, submerged in the bog garden, I guess. But it overwinters for us here as a ground cover.
So, well, it does make a nice ground cover. So I guess if people don't mind its invasiveness,
right,
it would work quite well for them.
Absolutely. And obviously it needs some moisture, you know, during the dry time of the year to help it spread and keep its texture.
Okay. Well, we'll take a look around on the side of the house here.
Sure.
Now, Steve, even though you've moved away from Stillwater, I can tell you've got some OSU roots here.
Oh yes, being an OSU alumni and living in Stillwater, this is a tribute, I guess. This is my orange power garden, and have the OSU birdhouse, and of course all of the flowers or textures or colors are orange. which is a very popular color this year as well.
So it works kind of nice to tie those both in together.
It is. It's a very nice display.
Now, in addition to your own personal landscape, you actually do, as you said, have the wholesale business.
That's right. This year we tried a little bit of wholesale and, of course, focusing again on the foliage color.
So, well, you've got some really interesting plants that you're selling, and let's take a look at those.
Okay.
Well, you can sure tell what you're talking about here with all the different foliage color when you come into the greenhouse.
That's right. It makes quite a display, doesn't it?
It really does. Now, what are some of the more unusual plants that you're working with?
Well, of course, there's the coleus, but there's so many variations of the sun coleus, but there's a duckfoot coleus. There's even one now that I'm using for hanging baskets that seems like it's going to work well. And then some that are more what I would call contrast plants. Of course, chartreuse is a very popular color, like the lamium here. And then there's moneywort and several of those. The ornamental sweet potato has that chartreuse color. But this is Plectranthus, and it's a cousin to the coleus. This one happens to be quicksilver, but it looks a lot like lamb's ear.
It does.
It has that same texture, but it's a nice one for a background plant. As you can tell, it gets pretty good size, and this would be my stock plant that I propagate from.
Now, you've also got a really pretty purple one down here.
Right. This is called Persian Shield, and Persian Shield is one that's a tropical plant, but it actually does a little better, I think, in afternoon shade, or even pretty close to full shade. But when you put things together, the texture and the color, again, you can see the purple and the pink, how well that stands out with that gray background. But that one's called Persian Shield.
That's a very nice plant, and that is a very good combination there.
It really is, and again, there's a lot of things that you can do in full sun and in full shade when you go with the foliage color plants.
Well, very good. Now, just because you've got a wholesale greenhouse business, it doesn't mean you're sitting home doing nothing during the winter, right?
Well, that's true. Of course, this is pretty much February through May kind of thing. And then the summer, of course, I'm putting up hay and working with the cattle, but I also have a monthly column on one of the internet magazines called Garden Escape, and it's a regional column for Texas and Oklahoma, and then I'm still doing quite a bit of writing and even have some syndication things in the works. So.
It sounds like you're staying busy.
Very busy, very busy.
Oh, good. Well, we really appreciate you giving us a tour of your yard and your business, and enjoyed seeing you.
Well, thank you. Good to see you, and it's a pleasure.